Hello and welcome to AFcast. I'm your host Malcolm, and today we are going to be talking about Anthem, which is a new video game that just came out recently. Its developers are BioWare and Motive Studios, and the engine for the game is Frostbite 3, so if you like how the game looks, and if you like how the game moves and stuff like that, it is all due to the engine. And the publisher for Anthem is EA, or also known as Electronic Arts. They didn't have anything to do with the actual development of the game itself. They were just the publishers of it. And this time I'm going to be mentioning, and hopefully I'm going to be mentioning this in the future, but the composer for Anthem is Sarah Schachner or something like that. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce her last name, but I will put it in the description so you guys can look her up. She actually did the Assassin's Creed video game soundtrack as well. I don't know if she did anything in specific, like any game in specific, that is, or if she did all of them. I doubt she did all of them, but anyway, she's a really good composer, and yeah. And the platform's available, or Anthem is available on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and on PC, and it is an open-world action-adventure video game. So to start us off, I'm going to be talking a little about the story. So the story, actually, when they first started it out, they actually, before the game even released, they had a huge lore. They have like a huge lore system that is already backed into the game, which already makes it very interesting if you understand any of the lore. Though you do not have to know any lore in order for you to actually enjoy the game. So don't worry about having to go and look up some stuff and read or watch videos on lore behind the game. But I figure I'd let you guys know in case you guys do like looking up lore and want to check that out for yourselves. But anyway, the main storyline is essentially about like a certain amount of time ago, based on when the game is. The game isn't necessarily based in our world, but essentially a certain time ago from when the game takes place, gods left behind these things called Shaper relics, which are unstable when they aren't in like the gods' control. I'm not entirely sure, but I think the reason the gods left them was because they were starting to get out of even the gods' control. And the main center point of all of this is the Anthem of Creation, which gives the name of it Anthem. And yeah, so essentially the Anthem of Creation is almost a like God in itself. Like if whoever harnesses the power, it like goes to be able to create stuff, destroy stuff, whatever. Right now, since nobody is actually in control of it, it's starting to go like haywire and stuff like that. So there were this group that made these things called freelancers, which were like, people that would go out, and they had javelins, which is a suit of armor that they were able to use to combat these Shaper relics and actually eradicate the problem that was caused by that Shaper relic and silence it, is what they call it. And so this can usually involve in picking up fragments of the Shaper relic from when it went off and then putting them back on to silence it. Sometimes you have to pick up these like orbs that are around and drop them off at a certain point where it will end up silencing it as well. And so you'll find yourself doing this on multiple occasions, whether it's a contract or a mission or anything like that. I'll get into that stuff later. But yeah, so your main character actually is a freelancer. They don't have a name, but yeah, it's just they just call you freelancer throughout, which is kind of weird, especially when you start to get to know people personally and they still call you freelancer. But hey, what you gonna do? Anyway, the storyline, I would describe the storyline as intelligent. There's a few plot twists in it, and it was really well made and stuff like that, and it's very like interesting. But like the whole like thing, it's just like it's smart how it's put together. It's an intelligent design. It can move slow at times. It moves fast at others. But it's smart how they put it together, and so that's why I'm describing it as intelligent. But anyway, so the main storyline, like besides that, all that stuff of the past, which is described right at the beginning of the game, is that like right at the beginning of the game, there is a new relic that goes off, and you're sort of new to being like you've done all your training and stuff like that, and so you're sort of new to being you're a rookie essentially, to being a freelancer. And a really dangerous relic went off that they ended up calling the Heart of Rage. And it is apparently closely related to the Anthem of Creation. And the whole thing, the Heart of Rage was too hard, and too dangerous for the freelancers to stop. So they ended up falling back, well, at least those who survived, because a lot of the freelancers actually died during that, causing people to lose their hope in freelancers since they have been around for so long, and this is the first time that they have been defeated. Now, after that event, 2 years later is where the main game takes place. So, essentially, the whole storyline is you going back to try and eradicate the Heart of Rage. And so the whole game builds up to that moment where you're going back to the Heart of Rage and actually finishing it off once and for all, and making the place safer, even though relics will still go off. So you don't actually stop the Anthem. Which clues you in at the beginning. It clues you in on that at the beginning of the game. So I'm not revealing anything. But a lot of the game is also in the end game. I'm pretty sure that if you're playing on normal difficulty, it's supposed to be about a 20-hour campaign, 20 to 40-hour campaign, depending on how you play, until you get to the end game. And then there's a lot of stuff for you to do in the end game. And especially if you get the Legion of Dawn expansion pack, which I do highly recommend because it is really good. That will give you even more endgame content to actually enjoy and play. So throughout the actual storyline, you'll meet interesting characters and people, and you'll actually start to just getting to know them personally, which is why I'm saying it's weird that they still call you freelancer, even though you've known them for a while after a certain period of time. But yeah, so one thing that is kind of annoying, though, is you can talk to people in this area called Fort Tarsis, which is basically your base where you can customize your javelin, which is your suit of armor, which you can interchange your weapons and stuff like that, and I'll get into all that stuff later. But if you get into a conversation with someone to get to know them better, you are not going to be able to get out of that conversation until the end, and sometimes those conversations can drag on, or sometimes they don't exactly relate to what you're doing. If you wait for a little bit to actually talk to someone after a certain event, and what they're saying doesn't exactly relate or make sense to where you are. So that part is kind of frustrating. And I have been having a glitch sometimes where certain people that you're supposed to talk to, especially for a mission, that gets really annoying. But sometimes they'll glitch out and it doesn't let you talk to them, or they'll just suddenly disappear off the map, or they'll be super jittery and stuff. It's weird. It actually came out in an update that was meant to patch other glitches, and I'm pretty sure that's the thing that actually caused it. So this stuff is going to get patched, so don't worry about it. This isn't going to be a forever thing. But yeah. So also, I mentioned Fort Tarsis earlier. So that's where you can customize everything, stuff like that, like I already said. But there's also shops there where you can go shopping for, what you're doing. And then some of the story also takes place in Fort Tarsis. And you essentially set up factions in the area where there is Arcanists, which is in this one area. There's freelancers, and then there's sentinels. So essentially, Arcanists are basically the scientists of the area that study the actual Shaper relics and stuff that are in the area, and you basically get an actual not a contract, but it's called Arcanist loyalty or freelancer loyalty or sentinel loyalty. And as you build up your loyalty, you'll get different rewards up to level 3, in which case you'll get a ton of rewards at level 3. And it'll essentially upgrade Fort Tarsis as you go. And it's not anything game changing really. It's just some stuff will change how something looks, or there'll be more stuff in one area. It's not something that unlocks this gift to give you or anything like that. It's just stuff around the area. But there are a couple other things like blueprints that you'll get which blueprints can be used to create like different abilities for your javelin or your weapons, which we'll get into both of those in a sec. And then the freelancers I've already talked about them. They're just the people that go out and try to silence these things. And then there's the sentinels, which try to protect Fort Tarsis, and they're essentially the guardians, and they do patrols around the area, everything like that, trying to stop anything from getting anywhere near Fort Tarsis, since that is one of humanity's last defenses. So that was basically the storyline right there. Now I'm going to mention some of the contents in the game. So first of all, you actually have 4 different types of javelin suits that you can have for your freelancer. So there's the storm one, which is essentially a like mid-armor, mid-speed, like elemental type javelin, which essentially just has different elemental abilities like electricity, fire, ice, like acid. I think those are the 4 things that you can have, that type of thing. And and basically you can float for a while. And what I mean by that is like you have actual boosters on your javelin suits for all of them, and they allow you to fly around the area. And so Storm just has the ability to essentially float for a longer period of time, and a lot easier than the other javelins. So another javelin is the Ranger. The Ranger is once again another mid-armor, mid-speed, who has access to most weapons, not the heavy weapons, and is just an assault class. You know, it's really just an upfront attacker, it's basically just like a normal soldier kind of thing. So it's nothing like too complicated or too strategic. It's just, you're there and you're fighting, you stay in front lines and stuff like that. And then there's the Colossus, which is essentially the tank. So heavy armor, heavy firepower, and you're all up. If you get up all up in their face, it's really good as well. But it does move extremely slow because it's 3 armor. It's like 3 armor, like 1 speed, or I don't know exactly how it. They basically categorize it as heavy armor and slow speed. And this is the only one, I believe, who can carry 2 certain weapons, the autocannon and grenade launcher, which I'll get into in a second. And then it has like mortars and stuff like that for you to fight or for you to use, and some bigger, heavier weapons. And then you also have the Interceptor, which is the one that I currently use. And this allows you to move around a lot faster. This is the super fast one with lower armor, and you can go around people and dodge things really easily in this. But if you get stuck, you can be in a bit of trouble since there is a lower amount of armor for the Interceptor. But yeah, the reason I really like it is just because I like to move around really fast around the battlefield and take out people as I go, because it also has a really strong melee. All of them have really strong melees, but the Interceptor is meant to also get up in your face, do some damage, and so if you have melee, then, that's good. Each of the javelins also have a actual special ability. So the Colossus uses a giant, grenade launcher type thing. I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's just a really big gun that does a lot of damage. And then the Interceptor has essentially a melee attack that just does a crap ton of damage and kind of leaves phantom melee. So you can melee something and then move away from where you meleeed, and then it'll basically the air, you can still see the air moving about and still doing damage to whatever you just hit. Then in your javelin, when you're customizing them, you have an assault system, a strike system, a support system, and then you have components. So the assault system and the strike system are basically the same thing, except for one's just an LB and one's an RB, where essentially these are just abilities that you can have that you can put onto your character depending on who they are. They don't each have the same assault systems and strike systems. For every single one, they are different. But then they also have the support system, which is also different, which is your LB and RB ability, which takes longer to cool down. than the assault and strike system. And essentially, this is just a little bit better, and more team based than it is solo based for your support system. And yes, this game is in multiplayer, so you will be playing with 3 other people if you're playing by yourself. Though you can set your expeditions to being private, except for certain things like strongholds. But yeah, so if you just like playing, if you just want to fly solo, I flew solo when I first started, but it is a lot more fun to play with friends, or at least a full group, and so yeah. But anyway, the components that you can then have on your Javelin essentially gives it different upgrades. So like one of the upgrades that I have on my Javelin is like a melee thing. So I basically do 20% more than my base damage or something like that. And then there's the same thing that like upgrades your assault system, your strike system, your shields, just anything like that. And so it basically boosts different like types of stats and whatnot for your different javelins. Some of these, I'm not sure if I think some of them go throughout multiple of the javelins, but I think there are some specific ones as well. I could be wrong because I think there might actually be just specific ones in general, just like the rest of the stuff. But yeah, anyway. So for the weapons in the game, you have a choice between assault rifles, which is just your regular assault rifle. You have the autocannons, which I'm not entirely sure how to explain them because they're basically just they have to like charge up. And then after they're done charging up, they're basically an LMG. And they do just like a ton of damage to any enemy that's in front of you. But it's a heavy weapon, so only the Colossus can use it. At least to my knowledge. I still haven't unlocked Storm yet or haven't really played Ranger that much, so I don't know much about those two except for like what their main purpose is. So I am sorry about that, but of course you can look it up yourself and watch videos on other people doing it. But yeah, so then there's also grenade launchers, which I'm pretty sure is also specific to the Colossus, which is just what it sounds like. It is a launcher that shoots grenades. And then you have a heavy pistol, which is just a normal pistol that shoots like bullets that essentially do more damage. So they have like a slower fire rate, but they do a ton of damage. And then there is a light machine. There's light machine guns in the game, which is just like any other LMG. There's the machine pistols, which are basically just Glocks. Machine pistols. Yeah. So they're basically just an assault rifle packed inside of a pistol. So they do less damage, and sometimes they'll have a higher fire rate than an AR. But yeah, and then you have a marksman rifle, which is just like your any old like basically half a sniper rifle, I guess. I never really know how to explain marksman rifles versus sniper rifles. Besides, they have like lower range, but like the same amount of damage basically. But they also have like increased fire rate, which is the same in this game as well. And then you have shotguns, which is your ordinary shotguns, and then sniper rifles, which are kind of weird in this game. I will let you know that the 3 types, one of them is basically a railgun, one of them is an actual bolt action sniper rifle, and then one of them is basically an LMG that just shoots really, really far. So, but they all have the same scope, and you can't shoot without scoping on the sniper rifles. Which kind of sucks, but what you gonna do? So the enemies in the game, so first of all, there's wildlife. So there are like wolves, scorpions, and spiders. They don't actually call them that, but that's basically what they are. Like the wolves are basically called like wolven or something like that, or I don't know. They have weird but cool names. But you will have to fight them as you go because sometimes they will attack the objective that you're at. Actually, the different like factions and stuff will actually fight each other. So even like scorpions and wolves will fight each other. And then there's the scars, which are basically just these creatures that will take scraps and put them like make stuff out of the scraps and like metal and stuff like that. They'll make civilizations. They'll make armor. They'll make weapons. That type of thing. So they're definitely reliant on your trash, basically. And then there's the outlaws, which are essentially people who have been banned from like Fort Tarsus or other civilizations like Fort Tarsus that are in the area and that aren't allowed to come in. They're basically criminals. There's another criminal organization in this, but they're only based in the story. They don't actually show up at all, like on scene. It's just that you have one mission where you enter the area, and that's about it. So I won't really mention them at all because I don't want to give away the storyline. But yeah, and then there's also the Dominion, which are essentially the people who are trying to go against you throughout the whole, like specifically against you, not just because obviously these are all enemies and they're all against you. But what I'm saying is the Dominion is specifically targeting you and like the people that you're trying to fight, and they're essentially throughout the storyline are trying to take control of the Heart of Rage, in a sense at least. And then there are Titans in the game. And by Titans, I am not saying that that is a nickname for something else. No, I mean literal Titans. Better than demigods, but still lower than gods. And you get to fight them. There are some smaller ones that are about 3 times the size of you. And then there are the big ones, which are about 10 times the size of you. Obviously with different health differences and also different... they don't have different types of attacks, but their attacks are scaled down when it comes to the smaller ones. And they're pretty easy to take out after a little bit of, game time and building up your weapons and skills and stuff like that. One thing that's really annoying about this game is that enemies after an objective is complete will sometimes just disappear into thin air. And sometimes this just like happens. Like sometimes they just don't even like say anything, but sometimes the game will also claim it as them escaping. So like sometimes you'll just see like people running away. And you can shoot at them. You can still like shoot and kill them, but sometimes like once they get to a certain point, they'll just like fade away into or I guess non-existence. And so it's really weird, and it's weird to watch. That's for sure. It's like, I don't know. It's not like they just like suddenly disappear. It's like they literally like dissolve into the air. I don't know. It's weird. But anyway, there are a bunch of different mission types in the game. So there are critical objectives, which is essentially your main storyline, and then you have agent quest, which is it's basically like side missions in the game, but like more directed towards the actual main story, I guess is one way to put it. And then you have agent contracts, which are essentially just people hiring you to help do certain things or help other people outside of the wall of Fort Tarsus, or just like collect something from outside or help, I don't know, something. And then there are also strongholds in the game, and the strongholds are essentially one of the highest difficulty things that you can do. And this is the thing that I was talking about, that you are forced to have a squad of 4 no matter what. You cannot do a private expedition on this. But basically, you go through an area that is just absolutely filled to the brim with enemies, and you have to complete a certain objective that ends in a high-level boss at the end that all 4 of you have to complete. And it does start off slow with actually having the ability to play multiple different kinds of strongholds. You pretty much have just one stronghold to play for a pretty long time until you get to like the end game, really. So that kind of sucks. I wish they didn't do that. I wish maybe there is something that I just missed that you can do in order to have something like that. But from my knowledge, you are not able to do any other strongholds except for one over and over again until like the end game, and then it'll give you some more. And one thing that kind of sucks, I was kind of hoping for, because this game is extremely cool, but there is no PvP, so you will not be able to go against your friends. So no player versus player. Kind of sucks. Kind of wish it did, but obviously that's not the main point of the game. And I'm almost happy that they didn't, but I kind of wish they did. Because PvP would be cool, but at the same time, the story and the end game and everything like that would be way less interesting if they put some of their attention into the multiplayer of that, or into the PvP of that. So I'm kind of glad they didn't. I'm kind of bummed that they didn't, but maybe they'll add it in later on. I don't know. But yeah, so something to add on a side note here is objective markers will sometimes glitch out as well. They will have objective markers that will help you lead you to like basically they'll carve out a path that's like fastest to get to the area that you want to go to. And sometimes they'll kind of like bug out and they'll keep like jumping back and forth between the one that was behind you and the one in front of you, or sometimes they'll just like disappear for a couple seconds and then pop back. It's weird. But once again, it's one of those glitches that they can patch pretty easily, and they probably will sooner or later at some point. But yeah, so that was pretty much the contents of the game itself. So onto the gameplay. So I've heard a lot of people, and I've actually compared it myself to Destiny because it has a lot of the same. Like variables in it, I guess, because the enemy health bar is pretty similar to Destiny. Along with like at the end of missions, you'll have about like a 10-second countdown in order to pick up any loot in order for you to actually like collect stuff further on in the game. And even the items that you pick up look pretty similar to the items, or how you pick up items looks pretty similar to how you pick up items in Destiny as well. So a lot of the looks to the game, it looks a lot like Destiny, but when you actually play it, it's kind of different. Some of the weapons also play the same, but once you get further into the game, it is an entirely different game. It's entirely different, so don't worry about it being too close to Destiny. But yeah, so in the game, the combat is extremely smooth. The weapons are really well balanced between each other. The snipers are kind of weird, but I mean, I can give them a good pass on that. But yeah, so the weapons are really well balanced. The combat is really smooth. Movement in the combat is really smooth, and movement in general is also really smooth. One thing that isn't smooth though about the movement in the game, and this can cut into combat because you do use this in combat, but it is the flying. The overheating is you get overheated like your suit does. Like while you're flying, your suit will get overheated and you'll have to like walk on the ground in order to cool it off, or like fly through a waterfall in order to cool it off. Or if it's raining, then your thing is like cooled, so it'll take longer for it to overheat, but it still overheats pretty quickly, which is kind of annoying, and I wish it took longer. I can understand the time period when it comes to combat because you are able to fly around and like hover as you shoot when you're flying. But I wish they found a way, like if enemies are shooting you and if they hit you, then maybe your suit starts to overheat more. Because if you're on fire, then your suit is automatically overheating, and you're not able to like fly when you're overheated. But yeah, that's just my 2 cents on that, because it does seem like it's extremely quick for what it should be. But anyway, the combat can be buggy. It rarely is. It's mostly really smooth, but the combat can be buggy along with the movement. But besides that, it has a beautiful scenery, and the soundtrack is absolutely amazing. So 100% thank you to Sarah, who did the Assassin's Creed that I mentioned earlier. Because she made an amazing soundtrack for this game. It fits really well. But yeah, so in summary of this, the storyline is intelligent, like I said, and it's overall just a really good storyline. I mean, it's nothing like too emotional or anything. It's just like it was well put together, and it was well done, and it had good plot twists, that type of thing. And the enemies were also well thought out in the game. The enemies are they're very smooth, especially when they fight with each other, because you can have basically like a 3-way fight almost, where you can, like the Dominion and Scars might be fighting at the same time. You're fighting both of them. And something I actually forgot to mention is that there are certain things, like the Scars have these things that come out from underneath the ground that like burrow their way up, and that's where Scars will come from, and so you have to destroy those in order to stop like basic Scars from coming through. I don't think any like legendary ones come through except for like right when they show up. And And for like the Dominion and Outlaws, like they all have a portal that shows up, and you can't shut those down. Those will just disappear after a certain amount of time. And then the wildlife obviously is wildlife, so they don't have portals or that type of thing. So anyway, yeah, the enemies were well thought out for that reason. One and two, their weapons match like who they are. Like the Outlaws, their weapons make sense for who they are. The Dominion, since they're like more well funded and stuff, their armor and whatnot makes more sense. That type of deal. And so enemies are just like were really well done. The combat is really smooth when it comes to them. So yeah, props. And there are still some glitches to patch, but they are patchable. At least I believe they are. I don't know why they wouldn't be, but they are kind of annoying. They don't really stop you from doing anything except for sometimes when, like I mentioned earlier, like people will sometimes disappear or something like when you try to talk to them, and that includes missions. So sometimes I've had to restart my game a couple times just to get like one person to talk to me to give me a mission. And that was pretty frustrating because when it first happened, I got back from a mission. I went to go talk to them, and it wouldn't let me because it was glitching out and stuff. I restarted my game, and I tried again, and they were still glitching out for whatever reason. And so I restarted my game again, and then it was finally working. So it was kind of frustrating because that just wasted like 5 minutes of me being able to have actually played the game. But yeah, so still some glitches to patch. But overall, it has very smooth gameplay, like I've been mentioning. And the world itself is amazing. It's beautiful. The soundtrack makes the world even better. And it makes the story even better as well. And so, yeah. So I give this a 9 out of 10 rating. And the 1 out of 10 is mostly just the glitches. The overheating I can deal with. The overheating's fine. I just think that it would be better if they had some kind of system that while you're just flying through the terrain, that it's not actually like overheating as fast. But like if people would start shooting at you and stuff like that, and they start hitting your suit, it gets overheated faster. I just think that would have been the smarter way to go. But once again, I'm not a game developer, so I just review them. So anyway, that's all we have time for today. Make sure you check out our website, our Discord, our Instagram, and our Twitter. I also have my email in the description for if you guys have any ideas for either games or updates that are coming out soon, or even just generic things that you guys want me to discuss. And yeah, so game on.